What's going on, my talking comrades? And today we're going to be looking at one of my personal favorite X-Men stories of all time, because honestly I wasn't really into the X-Men until this, honestly. But the House of X and Powers of X, and probably a little bit of Swords or whatever, just because I might. There's one detail I'm not sure when it comes out, but I'm trying to put this together as more of a starting point so you can get into it and put them all together. So I'm not sure. Some details are sort of going to be out of order, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm trying to put it so it makes more sense because these comics were intertwined and a lot of details just sort of don't really get explained until the other comic. So I wanted to go ahead and just put these together. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the beginning, and this is a pretty cool. But before we get into any of that, I want to go ahead and explain why I went ahead and posted the Phoenix 5, because honestly I was originally going to scrap that video, but I wanted to go ahead and kind of give you guys a sneak peek into just sort of the story, just what kind of before they could really make any, I don't want to say long lasting things, because a lot of the things from Avengers vs. X-Men Phoenix 5 were long lasting. It's just more of what if they did that but did it better, and that's pretty much where this pops off. So let's go ahead into the occasional love interest of Professor X, Moira Matago. I think that's how I pronounce her last name. Not fully sure, but her name's Moira, so let's just go with that. But pretty much, she's an occasional love interest of Professor X, and was just now shown that all those times she was kind of with him was just one of the possibilities. She, in her original life, because her ability is reincarnation, but if you guys ever watched ReZero the anime, it's that sort of type of thing. So when she dies, her life pretty much resets. So everyone in time resets with her. So Captain America, he just turned evil for Hydra, for Secret Empire. This isn't a real example, by the way. This is just like a fake example. But she just died. He's back to being good. Secret Empire has not happened yet, and it just resets. So if she did everything the same, theoretically it would be the same. Not even theoretically. I mean, if she did everything the same, it would end up the same, unless she just like walked across the street a different way. But that's more hypotheticals and stuff like that, which are unnecessary, because a lot of gonna be honest, I'm gonna skip a lot of things with her, because I'm only gonna stick to the meat and potatoes, the main point, because honestly this is just, there's a lot of information, a lot of characters, really cool characters, not necessary though. So we're gonna go and skip them and kind of keep this sort of a shorter video when I'm not monologuing like this. But pretty much moving on, she actually shows that she's actually lived 9 lives, and this is like her 10th. But in all those lives, she originally pretty much lived a happy life, lived a full life, died of natural causes, I believe. Not fully sure about that, but she did die. And then she realized, like, oh, I'm back here. I'm a baby again. So pretty much goes through, she was awake during childbirth, so she went through all kinds of stuff, and then was just sane, I guess. That's like, it's in the, they mention it in the comic, she just is sane enough to pretty much go through that experience. But pretty much lives a life and just realizes she's immune. Tries to go see Professor X, does not happen. She actually dies in a plane crash on her way to meet there. But then they go to her third life, and she actually meets Professor X, but he's not humble. He's not the Professor X we really know. It's more of the arrogant Professor X who thinks he's pretty much better than you. Just he thinks he's the smartest man in the room, which in his case, if he isn't, he will be. So eventually she dies. I forget exactly how she dies, but pretty much she dies. She dies 9 times to be exact throughout the story. But pretty much, she actually, like, just is like, okay, so I don't think I want to go through that again. So she actually develops a cure for the X gene, and she actually did it, like, I assume mostly for herself, but it wasn't meant to be forced upon people. But pretty much Mystique, Destiny, and Pyro all show up, break in the lab, and pretty much explain, like, you think they're just gonna, you just developed a weapon for them to disable anyone that rises up against them, and even take them out before they rise up, you know? Mutants have the ability to kill a normal human being way easier. So, obviously, they're going to, do all this, like, force it upon you and stuff like that. So, pretty much, Destiny and Mystique are actually, I'm getting that later, but pretty much their thing, and Destiny actually writes books that tell the future. I don't know if she sees the future and writes the books, or if the books tell of the future. I'm not sure. I don't really know. But pretty much, she just explains that if you ever do this again, if you ever make a cure in any of your other lives, I will find out. And I'm going to do this again. And she sends Pyro the Bono alive until she dies, which she inevitably does, because we move on. She ends up working with Professor X, falls in love, and that's sort of like the X-Men from like I want to say she was in the X-Men animated series. I'm not fully sure about that, but kind of like that. Well, like kind of original X-Men, old X-Men, kind of like that. She actually was from the New Mutants, kind of like working with them, helping mutants. And she actually realizes that that just does not work out because she dies inevitably. And then she tries it again, pretty much because she doesn't want to give up. Like, she believes in Professor X's dream and stuff, so she doesn't want to give up on that. But inevitably she does, because that does not work out. And they pretty much build a little utopia, and that does not work out either. Sentinels sort of exist and destroy them. And honestly, it's one of those things where, like, it's really interesting because, like, honestly, she could go her entire life like she did the first life and not know she's immune, and then Sentinel can just show up and know and just execute her. And you would never know why. I mean, unless you knew what a Sentinel was, and obviously you'd realize you're immune, but you wouldn't ever, like, know what could I do? Maybe I'm as powerful as Legion. Maybe I'm like Iceman and I can just do stuff. No, Iceman's actually pretty powerful, but pretty much moving on. She actually ends up working with Magneto. That doesn't work out. Ends up working with Apocalypse. That doesn't work out. And then this is why I'm going to pull on from an earlier part, because again, like, I'm trying to explain these to you in the most easiest way possible, so I'm not going to go like by the comic, just kind of putting this together as I go. But pretty much, earlier they explained the different timelines, and that's what the characters that don't really matter. But pretty much, mutants kind of evolve, and so do the robots. Sentinels are robots in this, like, phrase. But pretty much, they evolve, and there's an ultimate Sentinel called Nimrod. And it's pretty much like the final Sentinel, the Sentinel that rule all Sentinels. But then there's a bunch of other Sentinels, which I'll get into. The middle one is Master Mode, which is a giant Sentinel who actually creates Sentinels, and eventually would lead to Nimrod. But without Master Mode, you don't get Nimrod, which I'll get into later, because that's actually like a main point. But pretty much, Nimrod's fighting everyone, kills Apocalypse and stuff, and all these people, like resistance members, pretty much, I guess. Like the Red Devil, the Towel, it was like tarot cards, it was weird, I don't really care. Not really necessary. Pretty much they just get information to her in the future, and Wolverine's there because technically he doesn't really age unless it's Old Man Logan, which his healing factor was actually just slower than Wolverine's. Took me a while to kind of realize that, honestly. Bit more embarrassing, because I really like Old Man Logan, so I was like, oh, Wolverine does age. No, he doesn't. It was like 1,000 years, 1,000 years in the future. Sorry about that. And yeah, he's fine. Same with Moa, who was actually the Apocalypse of that time. So that's actually pretty interesting, because same with the Apocalypse route, when she went with him, actually sort of absorbed. You know how he can kind of like give his power to the bodies? It seems like that's sort of what happened to her, but I'm not fully sure. Then we have Krakoa and Cypher, which I'll get into later as well. But pretty much, all of this was just so they can get information to her. And once they get it to her, Wolverine just immediately pretty much kills her, and just like, well, I guess I gotta do it, so sorry about this. Probably gonna be pretty painful, because I don't only do headshots, I only do gut shots. So, you know, it's probably not immediate death, but pretty much, she bleeds out, I assume. And pretty much resets, and then we get to this timeline, the final timeline, because apparently Destiny actually revealed that supposedly she does not have unlimited lives, she just have a capped life. And there's no amount of quarters is gonna raise her life meter, which is not a good reference. I apologize for that, but pretty much moving on. She actually pretty much just goes to Professor X, who is currently at a fail. No one knows he's immune. He hasn't started the whole Professor X School of Mutants, anything like that. Also, I know he has a name, Charles Xavier, but I don't respond to fake names. But pretty much, he's just hanging out at a fair and just happy, because he's just getting ready to start his school. He's like, man, life is good, you know, life is just really good, and honestly, I think I can make life just a bit better for everyone else too. Everyone else around me can just help the community, grow it, build a world, I guess. I don't really know exactly the extent of it, because in Utopia it seems like they had a full-on, like, not even a nation, like, maybe an Asian. I don't know exactly, but pretty much he's just having a good time at this fair. And that's when Mo actually shows up and pretty much just sits down and just asks him, so what you smiling about? And he explains about his dream of building a better place, and he's just not any specifics because he's trying to keep it hidden. No one really knows. And that's when she sort of was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool, Charles. And he's like, oh, how'd you know my name? And she's like, well, read my mind. And that's when she shows all the different timelines. And every single timeline, they lose. Mutants just lose. And that's when Professor X, I'm just assuming, is heartbroken at this point. Just, you can see his shock go over him, and it's just one of those things where it's like, man, like his entire dream and in multiple lives a waste time. So he's like, well, guess to go play God then. And that's what pretty much what he does, honestly. I'll get into that later again. But pretty much moving on, they go and they're like, oh, so this isn't working out at all. What we need to do is combine efforts. And he's like, oh, Magneto, just take off your helmet. I know you don't trust me, but you should. You should trust me. So pretty much he takes it off and shows him the images he just saw. And pretty much, at least that's what I'm assuming, see pretty much the same images. Maybe a bit fine-tuned to his liking. Don't know. Maybe. It depends on how easy it is to convince him. So he gets Magneto on his side. And pretty much they go off to build this. Not really build this, but there's an island called Krakoa. It actually existed before the story, but I never knew about it. It's an island, but it actually absorbs. It's a parasite to some degree where it actually, you can't just live there. It actually does absorb, I want to say, some of the mutant genes, something like mutants naturally give off, I assume. I don't know the exact specifics, but pretty much the island Krakoa is absorbing stuff, and pretty much with all the mutants there, it's no problem. So they move all the mutants there, and fast forwarding some, pretty much everyone's there. Professor X got a specky new helmet, which actually is Cerebro, I don't know how to pronounce it, but pretty much it boosts his mental power, making him, honestly, like he could restrain 1/4 at least of the Phoenix Force. So imagine what he can do with this, which is just boosting his power. And it's pretty cool. And they go and get Mr. Sinister and Apocalypse. And Apocalypse is one of those characters, like, seems to be kind of killing everyone, but like in every other story, but pretty much is one of those things where it's like, oh, you guys all banding together, man, that's all I've been trying to do, you fools, man, let's do this. So he groups up pretty much, and honestly, so far he's been on the side and moving on to X of Swords, which is like way in the future. Still isn't, I don't think it's over as if at this point in time, but I've been trying to keep up with it. I think I'm missing like one issue, but pretty much they kind of delve into more of Apocalypse Soldier and kind of flesh him out and shows like he's not as bad of a guy as we all thought, which it doesn't matter. Like, actions speak louder than words, especially when your actions are murdering everyone. But pretty much, they recruit him, and they do this silent council thing, which like has Emma Frost, Jean Grey, and everyone I just mentioned on it. And they actually try to recruit Namor, which is in my Phoenix video. I actually mentioned about like Phoenix. I'm not really used to Namor being on the X-Men, and it's because of stories like this where like they try to recruit him, and they're all like, oh, hey, Professor X goes to him, is like, oh, hey, so I'm creating an island, Krakoa. I'm not creating, but like I'm doing an island. So do you want to be in? And pretty much Namor explains to him, I'm the ruler of Atlantis. Do I look like I ever got mistreated? I mean, I don't, not really mistreated, but do I look like I ever thought I was on the same level of you peasants, pretty much? And honestly, that's pretty much how it goes. Is I forget exactly what they say, but pretty much that's the gist of it. Was he never considered himself on the same level of humans, unlike Professor X. So obviously he never really was treated like a human, because he always acted like a king, which Professor X did not. He was pretty humble, or he's really arrogant and stuff like that. So he was either extremes or not. And this Professor X, honestly, is like my favorite. Like, I love Legion, so I never really liked Professor X. He's deadbeat dad. Screw that dude. But pretty much, this Professor X, no kids, no strings attached. So I can just really like this dude. Legion killed himself. He's out of here. Which also, they develop an ability. Pretty much all mutants are immune, like the death. Just they have immortality to a certain degree, which I'll get into later, because that's actually the first like scene of the book. But pretty much I don't want to mention, because it actually like doesn't really. I'm trying to keep this timeline like, it makes more sense, I suppose. Just because it could be a little bit confusing because a lot of things are intertwined in this like story. So pretty much moving on, he moves on from Namor and stuff like that, and we're gonna go and jump into the actual mission. Which actually I should probably mention, Magneto pretty much invites everyone, all the mutants across the world, go and plant these seeds of Krakoa, which is the island that pretty much absorbs mutant genes. I'm not exactly sure what it's absorbing. I don't know if there's a technical. There probably is because there's a lot of information in these books, and I'm skipping a lot of it because honestly I just want to keep this video short as it possibly can while making it a worthwhile story, and kind of keeping it not only entertaining but keeping it informational to a certain degree, just not to the point where it's overwhelming. So pretty much moving on, he invites all the world leaders and pretty much the leaders of companies like pharmaceutical companies, and they pretty much talk about how so the X-Men pretty much got the Krakoa with the help of Krakoa, actually use these I want to say pills, drugs, pretty much pharmaceuticals, and pretty much just are producing them now, and pretty much as the first act of the new X-Men, because I'm just viewing all the Krakoa as the X-Men pretty much. So Professor X just broadcasts himself to the entire world, everyone's seeing him, and he just explains in the past, I used to like humanity. I would have given you this drug that pretty much just helps you. It does nothing but help you, and I don't know if that's true or not yet, but it remains to be seen, honestly, because he could be lying, but pretty much it seems like it only helps you, honestly, because it's just, there's a lot of shady stuff with the X-Force and stuff, so I don't know, Beast and stuff, but that's totally off topic, I'm sorry about that. But pretty much, he just explains, I would have given this to you for free. No questions asked, no strings attached, but now you're paying for it, because I'm tired of you killing me. And, I mean, he doesn't exactly say that, but, he saw himself get wiped out while being the nice guy multiple times in multiple timelines, and he's tired of that bullcrap. So he pretty much just explains, it's not happening anymore. It's not happening anymore. And pretty much, that's it. He ends it. And so, Magneto pretty much gets all the world leaders and company, not all the world leaders, but I want to say some, and company, pharmaceutical, not salesmen, but leaders, CEOs. I assume, I don't know exactly who is on the guest list for all this, but pretty much, there's a bunch of clones of Emma Frost, pretty much working them, and they actually pretty much mentally scan the gods. Not the gods, but the people there, and pretty much explain none of them have good intentions. Even this dude brought a gun, and Magneto pretty much just disarms the man and explains, what I'm master of magnetism. It's just my thing. You can't do that. But pretty much he explains that it was only for protection, and that's when Magneto really steps in and just explains it always starts as protection, but then it turns into an offensive weapon. And that's what we can't have. So he pretty much destroys it and explains you guys are nothing but wolves in sheep clothing. You guys seem weak, but then you kill us. So he explains, he goes to the balcony, bringing them to this holy city of Jerusalem. Feel like I butchered that. Really sorry, I've actually tried that a few times. Not very good at that. So we're gonna go ahead and move on. But Magneto actually explains that he brought them to this holy city just so he can explain that he actually is one of the new gods. All of humankind are you new rulers, the new gods. And pretty much, it's just one of those things, it must be disappointing, because he actually thought they were going to Krakoa, and he should have immediately shut that down. It's nah man, Krakoa is for mutants only, son, you ain't coming in there. And pretty much just explains alright, so I pretty much brought you here just to explain that I'm ruling you now. And we actually learn, I believe, in one of those panel things, pretty much, that in 20 years, all of humankind will overpower humanity in numbers. The majority of mutants on Earth will be higher than the majority of humans on Earth. Which, it makes sense because, you don't need superpowers to give birth to some of the powers, pretty much. Now, I don't know if that affects how powerful the mutant actually is, such as Franklin Richards, which is arguably the most powerful mutant in the pretty much Marvel Universe, just because Franklin Richards is, pretty much has the ability to just manipulate reality. And now, he is a kid, so he doesn't really know how to control it, but we've seen the adult version, who actually is, super powerful, pretty much. And it's just stuff like that, where his father and mother were Fantastic Four's main leaders, Sue Storm and Mr. Fantastic and stuff like that. So I'm not sure powers actually pretty much play a factor, because he didn't get any of those powers, but it could have played a factor, honestly. But then there's mutants, like, I guess Jean Grey, who, like, their parents had nothing to do with the, like, mutants, but ended up being born the perfect host of the Phoenix Force, which is interesting. But then you got, again, like Legion, whose parents are pretty powerful. Now, you didn't necessarily inherit that ability, but you got an ability stronger. So I'm not sure if power could play. It doesn't seem like it does, at least not a direct factor, but it could have. It's just something I felt like I should mention. So we're going to go ahead and move on with actually the mission. Now, the start of this mission, we're going to have to move over with Mystique, Toad, and pretty much Sabretooth. Kind of like the classic Brotherhood of Evil, Brotherhood of Mutants type thing. I don't know if it was evil or mutants, so I'm sorry. But pretty much those three. I was going to say two. I always forget Toad exists. But pretty much all of them are breaking into the damage control, which is pretty much a group of people who actually just clean up after superheroes, like fight big battles. Be like, Hulk can only destroy so many buildings before there's just no buildings left. So they pretty much remove the debris and allow for that building to be reconstructed. Assuming that they reconstruct it. I don't think they do. I think they need a building patrol. I'm not sure. Not surely. I'll have to find that out for you guys. But pretty much moving on. They steal some files because they actually like pretty much record everything, because like it's basic procedure. Like you record what you did with your job, and those jobs require superheroes and stuff like that. But pretty much they steal some files. Now I don't know how the damage control got these files, because the file was, I believe, was about Master Mode, which was this giant Sentinel who actually creates pretty much other Sentinels. And they actually sort of explained that like they need that. Later on they explained that they need that file to launch the mission, which I'll get into later. But pretty much Sabretooth pretty much just goes wild, honestly. Just starts killing people, you know, they can't hold him back. He's a wild beast, pretty much. Which is actually pretty much what he's compared to a lot, is like wild animals. Pretty much him and Wolverine's wild animals. So he's killing people. Mystique and Toad just like, they're not really killing any people. I believe they specifically show, because those two actually get away, while Sabretooth is actually taken down by the revival of the Fantastic Four, which is the reason why I mentioned Franklin Richards will actually come back up. I just wanted to go ahead and let you guys know that he's a mutant, so we're going to go ahead and move on. And Sabretooth is successfully taken down, I want to say rather easily, by the Thing, and pretty much Sue, Mrs. Fantastic, I assume, pretty much just puts him in a little bubble. And honestly, it's a pretty easy fight, just because while Sabretooth does have a healing factor, so I feel like the fight ended way too soon. I suppose it depends on how sharp his claws are. Like, can they actually cut lock? Because if they can't, then you're not going to win against the Thing. But if they can, then it should have been a bigger battle, in my opinion. But no matter, because pretty much what happens is Cyclops, in a matter of minutes after this fight takes place, I'm assuming, you know, panels, you don't know how much time, but I'm assuming it took a few minutes for him to arrive there in a Quinjet. Not a Quinjet. I forget what they're called, but I don't know. Pretty much in a jet, arrives, and actually just, honestly, he's pretty friendly. He just shows up, says his hellos, and like, oh, hey, what you guys doing? Oh, yeah, thanks for taking out Sabretooth, man. I'll take him off your hands. And by the way, while this fight was happening, Mystique and Toad actually got away. And pretty much what happens is Cyclops, honestly, just, like, he's all friendly, and then he demands for the prisoner, because he does not want a mutant to be judged by human standards. Which, honestly, is a fair statement, because, you know, you should deal with them. Though, honestly, the Joey probably would vote the same whether or not the mutant or human, like, which I'll get into later, because it's probably gonna pop up here in a few minutes. So pretty much he just asks for him back and explains that he pretty much has amnesty, which pretty much means he has diplomatic immunity. So like, man, he didn't know what he was doing. Well, the laws here are just so different. I have no idea if that's how it works, so I'm assuming that's what it means. I have no idea, but pretty much diplomatic immunity is, I think, the gist of it. So pretty much they just don't give in to him. Mr. Fantastic's like, I'm not giving you this, dude. I don't know. I don't really trust you. And pretty much Sue Storm, Mrs. Fantastic, again, I assume. I don't actually know if she's ever called Mrs. Fantastic. Most likely, though. but pretty much shows up. I mean, she was there, but pretty much shows up in the conversation, walks up, and just asks them like, "Oh, are you legitimately like, are you doing this? You build an island?" And pretty much Cyclops just immediately responds with, "Yeah. Did you think we were just gonna let you keep on killing us like forever?" Like, and he'll respond is like, no, and he's like, "Well then, good. And also, you can tell your son if he ever wants to come home, he can." Referring to the son, Franklin Richards, that pretty much they're a fake family. Like, I mean, they're a real family, obviously, but he has a real home in Krakoa, and he can come home whenever he wants. So that's sort of one of those things, like Sneal statements that honestly could be true, and they actually do an Omega thing showing all the Omega mutants, which I just want to do a real quick thing. Iceman, really powerful Omega level mutant, but only because he can use his ability at all times on Earth. In space, useless, absolutely useless. Can't use that dude at all. I'm assuming. I mean, maybe use the ice in the body. I guess I'm not fully sure if he could do that. I'm assuming he can, but he's an Omega level mutant because he can use his ability at any time on Earth, pretty much. I don't understand how Mystique is not an Omega level mutant because she can use her ability pretty much at all times, and when she's surrounded by mutants, she can just shapeshift and use that mutant's ability. I believe her name's Hope Summers. I actually mentioned her in Phoenix 4 video 5. Why did I say 4? I'm already removing someone and probably name her. Not used to that dude, but pretty much moving on. Just Hope Summers is a Mega Level mutant because she can use multiple abilities at once. Now I understand that if there was a slot thing, that Mystique wouldn't fit there, but it's just one of those things where I don't really understand how she's not an Omega level mutant because she can use her ability pretty much at all times, but not all the time. So I do understand that. But same with Deadpool. For his regenerative factor, he pretty much should be an Omega level mutant because if we're just talking about no capacity, because you do not have a limit. Deadpool does not have a limit to regenerating. And side tangent, just want to explain something. This is something I have a problem with. I don't understand how Wolverine can be drowned, but he can survive in space. If he can die because of lungs, if he can die because he doesn't have any air, or his lungs are filled up, why can he pretty much regenerate in space? Which I'm referencing the original Infinity War, which I read a while ago, and honestly, it's just he regenerates in space. And he's fine. So I don't understand how he can drown, but he can survive in space. It's one of those things where it's one of those things where it's a common weakness. Same with Martian Man. I don't know. It's a common weakness. People think he really does have, but if you really think about it, it doesn't make any sense. Like the file thing. Actually, the file thing they directly address it. It's one of those things where he doesn't actually have a weakness to file. He doesn't have a weakness. It's just a mental thing. And I suppose maybe Wolverine was scared of drowning puddles since he drowned his own kid in a puddle. That's what happened to Draken? I don't know. I don't remember. I think his name's Daken. Whatever. But pretty much, sorry for the side tangent. I always never understood that, so I wanted to go and mention that. But pretty much moving on. Cyclops pretty much leaves, not getting Sabretooth. And later on, actually, in the Joy, the courthouse and stuff like that, the sentencing Sabretooth, pretty much Emma Frost kicks open the door and just is like, "Oh, I got MST." Cyclops wasn't willing to fight the Fantastic Four, but you guys, man, give me that mutant. And she takes the mutant, Sabretooth, and Sabretooth's like, "Oh yeah, thanks for getting me out of that." Honestly, it's pretty short-lived because once they get back home, the Silent Council, which is Professor X, Apocalypse, and everyone else, pretty much all vote that they don't like Sabretooth. He killed too many humans. Not part of the mission. The mission was to retrieve the files, which Mystique actually brought back to Magneto with Toad. Toad probably disappeared somewhere, hopping off. He's on an island. There's bound to be some flies. But pretty much just gives the Master Mode intel to him, which launches the mission, which I'll get into in a few minutes. But pretty much Sabretooth is actually literally locked inside the freaking island of Krakoa itself. So he's just down there, and honestly, he's still down there. I want to say it's been about a year now. From 2020 to 2021, it's almost a new year. He's been down there for about a year now. I'm assuming he just doesn't need to eat because he's just down there permanently. Because they pretty much all voted that he's too dangerous to be left alive. But they didn't kill him, obviously. So they just sort of locked him up. in the bottom of the island. So that's something. But pretty much moving on. The actual mission itself is the best scene in this entire book, in my opinion, is this scene when Cyclops pretty much walks up the Magneto and Professor X and just asks, because they just asked him to go on a suicide mission, because the actual master mode is on the sun. Well, directly in front of the sun, but close enough that if you got out, you're gonna burn. So pretty much he just, does this truly need to be done? And Professor X responds with yes, and then he just smokes and explains, then it is done. And that was the best scene in the book, because I don't care about Cyclops until this book, is the loyalty that he just showed Professor X right there. His loyalty we all need. No hesitation. He's like, oh, it's done. I got it. Let's do it. And pretty much just knows he's probably gonna die. They actually do know, I believe. Again, like, everyone's immortal. But because, Mr. Sinister actually has a DNA codex of pretty much all of them on the island, I assume, since he has pretty much is allowed to do it. And then Professor X's Cerebro, whatever, his helmet, his shiny helmet, which honestly I love the design of. But it does remind me of the Mako, and honestly I actually thought it was the Mako when I first saw it. But then I saw the X, like, oh, that's Professor X, has to be. And since his first line was, to me, my X-Men. Which I'll get into a little bit later when after this mission, but in the beginning, the first couple issues, they really tried to make Professor X as creepy as possible. Like, full on, like, doing this weird little, like, dance just with his arms up, like, a really little dance, like, cause the issue actually starts up with everyone's already dead, and then we find out how they died, and I'm doing it the opposite. I'm not showing how they died and they came back, so pretty much I'm just trying to make this make a bit more sense. So they go on the mission, and honestly, it's pretty cool. Mystique has a separate mission, and this is where the Destiny part shows up. I don't think they explain it in this book. I don't remember if they do or if it's something else. Maybe it's Donna X, because I get a lot of things for Donna X confused with House of X or Powers of X, because they all have X in it. So I literally read it in just one full run, just one day, read it all. Got caught up the X of Swords, and I get a lot of information confused, so I apologize, but this is just a story getting caught up. Pretty much Destiny left these books, and Destiny's dead, pretty much. And they all can bring any immune back, because anyone that Mr. Sinister didn't have the DNA of, and I forget what Golden Ball, I believe, is immune, pretty much makes these giant golden balls, as per the name, but it actually is an egg, which it wasn't an egg until the story, but they're trying to make immunes like him and Cypher, which I'll get into later, way more effective and useful. So these eggs pretty much, if you can pretty much put immune inside, and grow immune inside, I mean, I suppose you can place one in, but what's the point? But pretty much they use, Professor X can scan, pretty much memories, since he has, like, access, he's a telepath, so he has access to memories and pretty much can implant memories inside these eggs. The eggs build the human, or you can use the DNA, I assume, and use it, because I know they mention it at least once as the DNA from Mr. Sinister. I'm assuming that's why they always kept him. Maybe it's because he's technically a mutant, but at the same time, it's like, why would you keep him? And pretty much he's kept him around. They did use him for his DNA at least once, and then they usually just do. Professor X is pretty much the main guy, like, can just scan memories and implant them immediately, and pretty much that's how they revive you. So if you die on a mission, you're not going to remember how you died. You're not going to remember what you did after you left Krakoa, and pretty much that's pretty much the end of it, I believe, except for special exceptions with I believe I'll get into after this, because it's sort of a creepy conversation between Professor X and Marvel Girl, which is Jean Grey, because she actually is not the Phoenix in the story. But pretty much moving on, they send him to space, the Destroy Master mode, and honestly, Nightcrawler, it was awesome seeing him now. It's one of the X-Men I feel like is underrated at times, and then at certain times, not underrated. But in this story, he's a prominent member of the X-Men. They all are. It's not really the classic X-Men, because I don't think Beast was there. He may have been, though, but And I don't think Wolverine was a member of the classic X-Men, like the first X-Men. I don't know though. And Angel wasn't there. But pretty much moving on. Sorry, that was a weird side tangent. But pretty much moving on. They sent the majority of the X-Men, besides like Storm and Beast and stuff like that, because they kind of were running comms, and Storm's kind of, I assume, outside the egg little place, because that seems like once they die and come back, that's what happens. Is like she's sort of there to check that, make sure that they remember who she is, and like gives her a piece of information about themselves. And I'll get into that later, because once I keep on jumping ahead, I'm sorry about that. But pretty much moving on, they go there. Wolverine goes on a rampage, kills tons of people off panel, it seems, because they can sort of do a panel, and because Nightcrawler is teleporting people inside, not telling people, like, man, I know where they are, you go down that hallway, take a left. But pretty much moving on, he's teleporting everyone inside and stuff like that. Marvel Girl, Jean Grey, is actually inside the jet, and just sort of using a telepathic ability to keep everyone, like, kind of together, pretty much. And honestly, I assume that's why they have memories, is because she's keeping everyone telepathically combined, and I'm assuming Professor X has access to that, because it seems like they have memories. I'm not fully sure if they do, but I believe they did when they came back to life, so I'm assuming it's because of her telepathic link and her connection to Professor X, but I'm not fully sure about that. But pretty much moving on, they just all up there using their specific abilities. They're all getting a job done. And honestly, Master Mode is not on operational yet. So, and they order a bunch of Sentinels to come up there and help them, because this group of people working on the Master Mode is actually a collection of pretty much just racists of all these different groups. So we got AIM, Hydra, even SHIELD, I believe. So it's all these like supervillain groups, but like they're not. Like, the groups, but they don't segregate, so they segregated themselves and moved away and formed one big racist group. And pretty much just went up there and built a Master Mode, I assume. And, the final thing was Sword, which is pretty much alien defense, but they're useless, honestly. And they actually point that out in I want to say Avengers comic. They actually point that out, they're pretty much useless. So moving on, the reason why the Sentinel Master Mode was not actually operational yet was because they were trying to calibrate it so it doesn't they want to keep humans alive without worrying about, they want to kill mutants without worrying about if it'll kill humans, because the obvious answer is to defeat mutants is to kill humans, because humans breed mutants. So pretty much the Master Mode just gets activated because they're scared of, pretty much they're just like, oh well, everyone's gonna die anyways. And it's like one lady and her husband died and she activates it, and it was one of those things where it's just it's cool for the comic. It's just like the detail doesn't really matter. But I felt like I should probably still mention it because I don't think she comes back, but it was sort of like she was the one reason why it came online early. Which honestly, I don't think we even know if it would have went and killed a bunch of humans or not, but pretty much by this time they're pretty much all destroying it, and then the Sentinels arrive that they called for backup. They finally arrived and they actually pretty much just start killing everyone, just full on killing everyone. And also, just I forgot to mention this, but Apocalypse was actually taken down in the future by the head Sentinel Nimrod. So Nimrod is more powerful than most mutants, except for, I'm assuming, ones with regenerative factors. But Nimrod is intelligent, so there's no programming Nimrod. It's just he's an intelligent robot. I'm assuming can create Sentinels as well, but what's the point of a Master Mode if I'm not sure if he has a Master Mode with him. I'm not really sure if Nimrod has a Master Mode and is himself. It's one of those things I'm not sure how advanced Nimrod is and what they put in Nimrod exactly. But I'm assuming he also has the capability of Master Mode since he was based off the product of Master Mode. But pretty much moving on, I just wanted to mention that if Master Mode would have kept, Nimrod would have existed, and he would have pretty much wiped out the strongest of the mutants. But that was my point. But pretty much moving on, all the Sentinels get there, and Jean Grey's pretty much just feeling all the deaths over and over again, because they're all dying, not all at once, one after another. Cyclops just died. I was gonna say Jean Grey, but no, that wouldn't work. But pretty much Cyclops, I guess Angel. I don't think Angel was there. Actually, I don't remember anyone else except for Nightcrawler and Wolverine. So, anyways, pretty much Jean Grey just is in a ball position, pretty much in the corner of the room. And honestly, just pretty much crying because she just like literally felt all of her friends die. And honestly, everyone except for Wolverine and Nightcrawler, because they're the last ones to go. They go out like champs though. And pretty much, honestly, like they just easily kill her because like she's not even fighting back. She's just devastated. She just felt all of her friends die. And again, like Professor X probably is feeling that all the time since he's connected to pretty much everyone. And I'm assuming it was connected to her. But they don't specifically say it, but I'm assuming because they talk about the mission later, and I'm assuming they like had memories since they talked about it. But I'm not fully sure about that. So we can go either way. But moving on, the actual pretty much mission, it was an actual success, which they all knew they were pretty much going to die. And the Mother Mode, Master Mode, not Mother Mode, I think that's a different being, but I'm not fully sure. There's an Omega Sentinel who pretty much is like a female Sentinel. I don't know too much about her, but she was just pretty much like a design that isn't a major design. So like if you take her out, you're not gonna stop Master Mode. You're not gonna stop Nimrod. So like she exists pretty much. Not specifically in the story, just in the future, and she existed before as well in a separate comic. Which actually I think Nimrod also existed before, but just not as powerful as he currently is. Because this is the pretty much evolution of all technology in like 1,000 years, I believe. Not that much because like it literally was only 1,000 years, but pretty much humanity just became aliens, like these blue aliens. I don't know exactly how that took place, but apparently they did. But pretty much moving on, Master Mode has pretty much been so heavily damaged that it's actually falling into the sun, but it's still actually on, and they need to shut it down. So Wolverine just asked Nightcrawler, like, do you believe that I'm gonna go to heaven? Pretty much is the equivalent of what he was asking, and pretty much what Nightcrawler says, and I'll be waiting for you there. And he teleports them right outside in the Mother Mode because they were sort of in this ring surrounding Mother Mode, I assume. I'm not sure exactly where they docked down, but pretty much they teleport directly on the Mother Mode. Nightcrawler immediately burns up because they're like closer to the sun than they already were. So he pretty much immediately burns up, and Wolverine's just slashing at it, and pretty much destroys it by the time he reaches the sun. He's like, once he finishes, he pretty much just immediately burns away. And technically, his adamantium actually does not burn because supposedly you cannot cut adamantium twice, I guess is like the factor. I'm not fully sure if that's true because like there's adamantium swords, like an Nexus swords where there's an adamantium sword that cuts through it and stuff like that. I don't think that's true, but supposedly you can't melt it down. So pretty much he's up there. It was melted down and formed a skeleton pretty much because, you know, it's Wolverine's skeleton. So technically Wolverine's still up there and he's alive. So if the sun ever went out, or like, that's probably not gonna happen, but if the sun ever went out in the X-Men universe and his body fell, technically he'd come back alive. So, and if they ever managed a way to retrieve the body in the sun, which probably isn't going to happen, but technically they could, he's alive. So, you know, it's one of those things. That's sort of why I mentioned it earlier, like it doesn't make sense to me why he can drown, but he can stay alive in space. Which I don't really, I suppose he's not really alive as much as his his healing factor keeps him alive, so technically he just comes back and dies again. But he is still alive, he can come back, which is weird that drowning kills him. I didn't know he had a weakness to water. I didn't know this was unbreakable. But pretty much moving on. Mission was a success, and pretty much we go back to pretty much the first page, the first panel, which was kind of Professor X freely dancing, just moving his hips around a little bit, and pretty much just showing that like he's just really happy, and he's like, "To me, my X-Men," and then they all bust out of the cocoons because they all in those little like steel balls, I guess. But pretty much they all bust out, and Storm walks down and asks them all a question, a personal question. They show that like they have the memories and stuff like that. Not the memories from the last adventure, but pretty much just the memories, like that's the same person, because this is sort of showing off like the first time that they brought Immune back, which actually does not stick, because like X of Swords and stuff in a separate reality, like in other realities, if you die in another reality, you cannot use their memories and like body. I don't know, it's one of those things, like technically I guess that makes sense. It makes sense on pen and paper, I guess. But I mean, a comic is, I guess, pen and paper, but it's weird seeing. I don't understand how you can bring back someone using these methods, but if they go to a different dimension, you can't get them back. That just doesn't. I don't understand. Maybe magic, I guess. I don't understand how that affects like old stuff. But I personally would make tons of clones of myself. Oh, like even if I didn't want to use myself, like I want like 3 Professor X's right now. I want a mass production of Professor X's. We're taking over the world immediately. But that's neither here nor there. But pretty much moving on. There's always one copy. That's why I was mentioning the coding thing. Only Mr. Sinister actually copies himself, which is weird because I feel like they could get a lot more missions done if they had multiple Wolverines. But pretty much moving on. They bring everyone back alive. Which is why I mentioned that technically Wolverine's still alive in the sun, because assuming his bones didn't melt or anything like that, because technically they can't melt, but not sure how true that is. Like, I swear I've seen it been melted, but I don't know. But pretty much, he's alive, he gets up, everyone gets up, Cyclops gets up, and Professor X sort of grabs Cyclops by the chin, puts on his glasses, I guess, like visor, so he doesn't blast everyone. But pretty much that's kind of the end of that, and then Storm asks some personal questions, and Cyclops answers. I don't think she asked any specifics, just literally asking like, tell me something personal. Like, I guess is pretty much the equivalent of what she asked. And he just explains like, I wanted to rule the X-Men once, and you showed me what it truly means to rule. And that was his answer. Jean Grey, on the other hand, answered that I am the me I've always been. Not a good answer. I would have killed her when we tried that again. You can't trust those like vague answers. But that will bid us adieu. And I would like to go ahead and congratulate you for finishing the video. And I want to go ahead and say that I actually am going to be trying a new type of format, which is why I'm doing this like on a weekday or something like that. But pretty much I'm just, for these longer videos, because this is actually like 15 minutes, and I apologize for that. Longer than Phoenix 5. Phoenix 5 took me 5 hours to record because of so many mess ups. And I was actually going to scrap it, but it was already done, so I went and posted it. But I wanted this to be high quality because I really enjoyed this, and I want all my videos to be high quality. So I'm trying a new type of thing. Well, I'm going to record it like I'm doing now, and then I'm going to pretty much just work on it throughout the next day, and pretty much upload it once it's done. So it's not going to come. Usually once I'm done, I immediately upload. That's why I uploaded like 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. Like Phoenix 5 came out like at 5 a.m. So like if you watch that immediately, good job. But pretty much that's the end of this. I just wanted to say thank you for sticking around, and like goodbye, I guess. Also, next week maybe. I'm glad I pushed back the Venom symbiote thing, because actually I would have immediately regretted it, because the King of Black just introduced Iron Man with a symbiote armor, which I would have had to put that in. So I'm glad I'm waiting for King of Black to end. So pretty much, if King of Black's ended, I'll do King of Black. If not, I actually have a few stories to select from. I want to do either the Heart of the DC Universe, Superman, which kind of shows the Dr. Manhattan and Superman kind of fighting. But mostly I'm going to be just focusing on the fact that Superman pretty much runs the DC Universe and he doesn't even know it. And I'm probably going to have to go into the Batman Who Laughs and everything like that, which is evil Batman gaining the powers of Dr. Manhattan. Or I might do a Spider-Man Back in Black story, which every time I read, same with Marvel Knights Spider-Man, all I could think about was, why don't you just have the symbiote, Spider-Man? What is wrong with you? If you just had that, like, Venom doesn't just control you, bro. Like, what's wrong with you? But Spider-Man's all against the symbiote. But I really hope in the King of Black he gets a symbiote. And the symbiote Spider-Man tie-in and King of Black's fine and all. But I really wish in continuity we had it. Oh, I suppose it's in continuity, just not. It's one of those things like we know how that ends, because it's not current, it's back in time. So it would have been nice to see symbiote Spider-Man show back up in King of Black, because even Iron Man got a symbiote armor. So pretty much just the end of it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next week, hopefully. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. And the final thing I just want to go ahead and revisit is this little conversation after the mission from the Master Mold between Jean Grey and Professor X, where he's just sort of in the middle of the field looking at her, smiling, and telepathically talking to her. No one else can hear it. It's telepathic, so like, everyone else, this dude's just standing in the middle of the field staring at her with a smile on his face. So like, Cyclops made me think he might need to step up, because that's probably pretty weird, honestly, but that's about it. And I hope you guys had a good holiday, but I'm going to skedaddle.